Well, the business community, and I'm familiar with that, has a particular problem. If you're a big company, your CEO is probably going to be on the job 4 or 5 or 6 years. Yeah. And they're under a lot of pressure to produce results.
Right.
And so it's pretty easy to go into, say, China and say, make a short-term deal to produce good numbers that may not have great strategic implications 10, 12, 20 years down the road.
Make the shareholders happy, but
Yeah.
that's it.
I can tell you within the U.S. military, there's a lot of planning going on. It's a very difficult problem how we would confront the Chinese militarily. What our
And you
end
were
goals
president of the Naval War College.
Correct, and we have a group up there who works all the time. That's all they do.
What kind of planning? What's the nature of the thinking this through?
What their military goals are, what our political goals should be, what our military goals should be, the operational strategies that should be used in order to impose our will upon them rather than the other way around. Whether if the conflict escalates, should it be vertical escalation that is growing more and more intense with attacks on China itself, or should it be horizontally escalated, that is move away from China geographically and attack their interests elsewhere in the world? Should we wage conflict only within the first island chain, or should we attack their forces outside the first island chain?
You know, do we have the resources committed in the budget to implement on strategies like that?
No.
Because China seems to be one of those huge missed opportunities / threats, and that we focus so much in the Middle East post 9/11, and we fought these two, I think, very badly conceived wars in Iraq and Afghanistan, and consumed trillions of dollars of resources, suck things into that, and we end up with nothing.
Absolutely.
Virtually.
That's very sad.
I think one positive thing I can say is at least we're talking about it. Back
Yeah.
in the Obama administration, the Defense Department was not even allowed to put in its official documents that we could come into conflict with China. You couldn't talk about them in the national security strategy.
And that points to a really important, larger issue, which is that for 3 or 4 decades following Kissinger's visit to China and Nixon's opening, we accepted the idea that somehow, if we extended assistance to China and offered them guidance, that they would develop interest groups and then eventually political parties and eventually democracy, and we'd be able to deal with them as a regular or normal country. And as you said earlier, Bill, that never happened. It simply allowed them to grow stronger, to project force more readily. So we really have had a sea change in our attitudes towards China, a new realization of what we're dealing with. We've moved away from this Kissinger typology, and we're now onto a much more realistic notion.
I would also hope that we would take another hard look at our policy vis-a-vis Taiwan. I think it was a mistake that Kissinger made to dump our ally Taiwan over the side of the ship and cuddle up to mainland China. And that it's in America's interest that Taiwan remain an independent nation, no matter what. They are the key for China to break through the first island chain so that in a conflict they can push their forces out into the Pacific. And if China were to take over Taiwan, there's no way that we could hold them behind the first island chain. It's absolutely critical. It's a cornerstone to our defense, and yet nobody seems to be acting that way.
I couldn't agree more. I think Taiwan is critically important, and we've nurtured a small nation, 23 million people, into a vibrant democracy. They are our 10th largest trading partner, and they have patterned their society and their political culture on ours. What could be more desirable than to have an ally like that in the East Asian periphery?